Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, CEO of the experience communications agency, D-Flash. Each week, I bring on another interesting business leader who's doing something game-changing, world-dominating, or just extremely interesting and unique. This week, I'm excited to have Stephen P. Williams, prolific author of the new book, Blockchain, The Next Everything. It's a fascinating conversation. Have an awesome listen. So, hey, Stephen, great to have you here.
Hey, thanks, Laura. I'm really excited to be here.
Fantastic. So, easy, simple stuff. Whenever we start this podcast, I always ask the same question, and it's a simple one. What was your first job?
So my first job really informed all my other jobs after. I was a dishwasher at a Waffle House in Lawrence, Kansas, and I was underage, so I lied about my age. I think I was 12 or 13.
Awesome.
And the head dishwasher there was somehow discovered that I'd lied about my age. And he did two things. One, he demonstrated his knowledge of Kung Fu or Taekwondo or some martial art. He was about 15 and really intimidated me.
At 15?
At 15, yeah. And I was like 12 or 13. And he took that and then threatened me and said if I didn't do all his dishes that he would report me for lying about my age. So that was a big lesson in the work world in many ways.
I see how that can totally get you to where you are today as a prolific author. How many books have you written now?
I've ghostwritten about 10 books, and I've written 5 books of my own.
So 15 books.
Yeah.
So you've sat down and written hundreds and hundreds of pages 15 times.
Oh, yeah. Well, each book you write hundreds and hundreds of pages 15 times because you have to go over it and change it. And yeah.
And so how did you get there? Like, what was the thing that says, you know what, I'm in Kansas, working in the Waffle House, to now I've written 15 books. How does that happen?
Well, first of all, that job in the restaurant with the intimidating coworker, I think really taught me that I wanted to be an independent worker. And so I went from there, and as a young kid, I always worked since that first job. But I did a lot of entrepreneurial things. I made tie-dyed T-shirts in the colors of the American flag and sold those. I wrote a book of poetry, got it published, sold those. I got the local post office to give me a contract to wash the postal trucks. I was just always hustling something. And so I really haven't had that many official jobs in my life, and I knew that I wanted to be a writer, and I kind of saw that as a way to work for myself, and it's worked out pretty well.
That's amazing. And so you've never had a 9-to-5?
I've had a couple. I had a job when I got out of graduate school. I went to Stanford to study communications journalism. When I got out of there, I got a master's degree and then went to Tokyo and worked for the Pacific Stars and Stripes newspaper, the military newspaper. I was a civilian employee. So that was one job, and that was a great job, really, really fascinating. And then I had another job as an editor of or a writer for a health publisher called Rodale, where I wrote books advising people how to live healthy lives, take vitamins, do all this. And at the time, I was a really heavy drinker, drug user, and smoker.
So I was trifecta.
Trifecta, and I would go into work every morning, hungover, and write these books about, how to be healthy. And
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I would take breaks on the back porch and smoke my Camel cigarettes. So that was kind of a contradiction, and I worked there for two years, and it was actually great because I quit drinking and quit smoking while I was there.
Because you were reading what you were writing. You're like,
yeah.
This isn't good. I should probably stop.
Yeah, and from there I talked them into giving me a contract to work on my own in New York and write stuff for them. So I just moved to New York and left the corporate environment. And I think I had one other corporate job as an editor of a book editor for a year and a half. But that's pretty much it. I've done different interesting projects. A couple of years ago, I did a magazine for Shinola, put that together with the supermodel Carolyn Murphy. We worked on that and put together this beautiful thing, but that was a contract job for 9 months. And I worked for Colors magazine, which was put out by Benetton. just a few different things like that, but mostly really interesting side projects. But other than that, I've been just hustling on my own the whole time.
And how does one even do that? Because you're older than 12.
Yeah.
So how are you able to surprise? Like, what's been the thing that you said? Okay, cool. I knew I was great at writing,
Right.
and I'm just going to figure out how to make this keep working wherever I go.
Yeah.
What was your sort of path in doing that?
Well, my path, I think, is the reason I've been able to do that is because I have a really great work ethic. I work really hard, and I love writing. I love researching, and I love learning about new things. Like, I don't have a specialty. I write about anything that's interesting.
You're genuinely curious.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm really curious, and also I have a tremendous faith that things are going to be okay, and that's a spiritual faith and just a belief system I have, and so I don't. Especially the older I get, I'm 61 now, the older I get, the less worried I am about the future. I just, roll with it.
Wow.
Because everything's worked out so far, more or less. I mean,
more or less,
I've had my ups and downs, but
yeah. Yeah, you're standing upright, and you're not huddled over, and it's in New York. It's such afternoon in New York City, and you seem reasonably normal. Yeah. So we're good. I think that's a good way to look at it. So it's 2019. Uh-huh. You've done all of these really interesting projects with amazing people over the last 20 some odd years.
Right.
What made you decide to go look and find out what's happening with blockchain?
So, blockchain took me by surprise, for sure. I think it's taken most of the world by surprise. But I went back and got an MBA in sustainability a couple of years ago.
Because you just could.
Just because I wanted to. Yeah, I was thinking about, I wanted to go back to school, and I wanted to study painting, but I realized I had never made a painting in my life, so I could never get into a painting program. And the other thing I wanted to do was get an MBA, and I don't come from a business family or anything, had any reason. I just always kind of been really interested in that. And I was working on a business having to do with sustainability and realized I didn't know enough about business. So I was in the subway, I saw a poster that said MBA in sustainability, and so it tied in my two interests, business and sustainability and climate change, and I applied. It was through Bard College, and I went, and it was a program designed to let you work full-time and go to school. So I did that for 2 years, and it was really one of the greatest experiences of my life. During that time, I was reading, I think in some publication, I came across the word blockchain. This was in about early 2017, maybe late 2016. And the word just kind of stuck in my mind. I started researching it, and I went down a rabbit hole. I just became completely consumed by it, which happens to a lot of people when they start getting into it.
And so you fall down this rabbit hole, and I think there's so many misconceptions between blockchain, cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. What does this mean for people who are unbanked, and what does this mean for different communities of color? There's a myriad of ways that people are hearing about blockchain. What's sort of the 5 cent tour that you can kind of give folks?
Well, I really definitely got interested in blockchain rather than cryptocurrency. Although now I see that the two work together and have a much bigger effect. I think I was kind of snobby about cryptocurrency at first, which was a mistake because I should have bought a lot of Bitcoin at that time.
Oh, don't even get me started. I got an email from a friend of mine who told all of us in 2013 to buy $5 worth of Bitcoin. And I remember looking at that email going, what are you talking about? And then the day that Bitcoin hit 10,000 for one. And I do believe...
It hit almost 20,000.
But that was the one where I literally I was in a car.
Right.
And I just was like, I should just jump out of this car right now. Because why?
Because you would have had hundreds of Bitcoins for that $5.
Oh my gosh. It was, and it's funny because he put the thing on Facebook. He's like, I hope you all listen to me. And I'm like, oh, shut it.
That's true.
But, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what is, I guess, sort of starting at the very beginning for the people who have no idea, what is blockchain?
Well, blockchain is basically, it's a ledger. It's like the ledgers that maybe your grandparents used, those green books that had columns and, you would enter, I bought this tractor for $800 and sold this wheat for, $1,200. Those are my grandparents were farmers, so that's the way I think about it. But
it's a great way of putting it.
It's just an accounting. It's like an accounting ledger, but it's much more than that. Also, it's software. It's a digital system. It doesn't exist in any physical form, and it keeps track of exchanges of value. Basically, is the way to look at it. So that value can be monetary, it can be intellectual property, it can be almost anything. The information is collected into groups called blocks, and those blocks are attached to each other cryptographically in a chain. So that once the information is on the chain, it can't be altered. So it's like a permanent record.
So you got, if it's wheat for $1,200, if it's rice for $1,300, if it's butter for $1,500, that's the ledger, and it can't move.
Right.
Got it.
Stays the same. So the value of that is that for it was created to support Bitcoin, right? So the value of it, the person who invented it is a mysterious figure named Satoshi. Now I can't. Nakamoto, right? Sometimes, for some reason, I couldn't remember his name, and nobody knows if that's a single person or a group of people.
Man, woman,
anything. Right. Yeah, the person has disappeared. But anyway, the blockchain was invented to support Bitcoin because with Bitcoin you don't have coins that you can stick in your pocket. You can't prove that you have it. There has to be a way of keeping track of each coin and where it is and who spent it and who owns it, so that it doesn't get double spent, right? So the same person doesn't buy two things with one digital coin. And that's why it was created. Yeah.
And so now that, so there was a big boom and bust with cryptocurrencies.
Right.
And so that is still a bit of a mess in terms of, it went to 20,000, then it's less than a couple hundred now, I guess?
No, Bitcoin's over 3,000 now,
3,000.
3,500 right now, or a little bit more. But if you think about it, it seems like a huge bust because in a year it went from 20,000, nearly 20,000 to 3,000. But in the last, since in 2013 when you were offered it, it was probably cents. I don't know the exact figure, but
probably less than a penny.
Yeah. So if you look at that increase in value to 3,500 today in 6 years, that's pretty amazing, right? So I don't see it as a failure at all. I see it as a success. It's a failure if you wanted to get rich quick and you didn't cash out. But in terms of being something of value that's gone up, it's great. As far as its utility, it's not very useful in terms for buying things. Not very many businesses accept Bitcoin. There's not a lot you can do with it. It's more of a store of value right now.
And so, since cryptocurrencies are still pretty volatile, what are the uses that more people are using blockchain for now?
So blockchain has a lot of uses in, as you brought up one, which is banking for the unbanked. Right now there are hundreds of millions of people, especially in sub-Saharan Africa and India and other places, that just can't access the banking system. Either they don't have identification or they don't have enough money to open a bank account or, all kinds of reasons. But most of them have cell phones. So people have smartphones even. So people are creating systems where you're able to transfer money using blockchain and participate in the financial system for the first time. So I recently wrote a story about Indonesian farmers who are unable to get loans at good interest from banks because they don't have the documentation of what their harvests are, what the land, they don't have necessarily clear titles to their land, all kinds of things. And there's a company, Hara Token, that is giving them the credentials and the proof of identity that lets them borrow. So instead of going to loan sharks and paying high interest rates, they're able to prove themselves to banks and get money.
So it's really democratizing.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, that's the hope. Blockchain is still, I have to say it has tremendous potential, but it's still in its infancy. So a lot of these programs that people talk about are more hopeful than real right at this moment. But I think that you really have to judge it as an early stage technology.
So it's new. It's still early stage. What would you say if someone picks up your book, what are they going to learn?
So if they pick up my book, they're gonna learn about the culture and the potential of blockchain. They are not going to learn how to code a blockchain or even how to really create a blockchain in their business. What they're going to learn is how to think about the technology and to imagine how it might work within their life or in their business.
So
it's also in a way
for
that
dummies.
yeah, kind of. Except it's yes. Except I don't think that dummies would want to read about blockchain, to tell you the truth. But it is like I wrote it when I taught myself, and I spent years reading about it, and everything I read was very, very complex, and really was a struggle sometimes to learn, because it really, thinking about it involves economics, it involves history, it involves technology, it involves all kinds of things. And so I tried to create a book that was interesting to read, that had good stories in it, that had a lot of narrative and a lot of characters in it. So this is not a book. This is very different from all other books I've seen about blockchain. Like, this is actually fun to read.
So making blockchain fun.
Yeah. And even people who have no interest in technology seem to kind of get into this book.
So you've made blockchain interesting and fun for people. What's sort of the kind of 2 or 3 kind of big takeaways that come out of the book?
That come out of the book?
Yeah.
One is that that blockchain and cryptocurrency amplify each other, so that these projects that are created with blockchain can use cryptocurrency and tokens which are very similar to cryptocurrency but might have different values, might not be money actually, can use all these things to incentivize networks. So I think that the big thing that comes out of this is that the idea behind blockchain, that it's a distributed network, that it's spread out over all the computers that participate in it, and that the governing authority is not centralized, is a powerful tool that I think is going to lead us into big changes in the future. And that's kind of where I'm thinking now, is a lot about distributed networks and what that means for us, and what that means for communicating with your employees, for the customers communicating directly with employees, for the idea that there might not even be employees, that everyone is an entrepreneur involved in the system. Yeah. And so I find that really interesting. I had an idea for which I've kind of pivoted on, but I had an idea for a company that would have people remake used clothing and dead stock that's in warehouses, and do that in order to avoid the waste that's like prevalent in the fashion industry. So as a way of reducing carbon output. So have a system where people all around the country or all around the world are part of this one manufacturing system, but they're all working on their own in different locations. And I was thinking of a distributed, perhaps blockchain network that would support that. There are all kinds of ways of looking at it.
Awesome. Fascinating.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of folks are still like, oh my gosh, this blockchain thing is like going to change the world. But
right.
It's really about distributed networks and, potentially helping people who are unbanked is a huge aspect to this.
That's gigantic, yeah.
What do you think is probably the biggest source of confusion?
About blockchain?
Yeah.
Well, just the basic question of what is it? I think people get confused by the idea that it's a system, right? And it's based in software. And I think people think that it's something tangible or something that you go to the store and you buy a blockchain.
Yeah, they can't get past the fact that you can't touch it.
Right. And so I think that's hard for people. I think I was saying the connection between cryptocurrency and blockchain for me is a powerful tool, but also I think there's a big misconception that cryptocurrency, a lot of people see it as a corrupt thing because of all the shady characters that have been involved with it,
right?
All the corrupt initial coin offerings that have gone along. So people, I think, associate, lots of times when I say blockchain, they go, oh, that's Bitcoin, right? Or that's crypto. And then they kind of roll their eyes and look at me like...
You're a shyster.
Like a shyster, yeah, like I'm a nut. And so I think that's the biggest problem right now. I actually see the drop in value of cryptocurrency. And just as an aside, I barely own any cryptocurrency. I own some Ether and I own some Litecoin, and they've all tanked.
Same.
But I haven't bought any Bitcoin. But I think the drop in value of the cryptocurrencies now is actually good because all the people who are in it, in the space, in the distributed system space, just to get rich, are kind of moving on to the next big thing, whatever that is. I have no idea what that is. And it's leaving a lot of teams that are, very serious about what they're doing, and I think that in the next few years, that's really gonna show.
Because there's going to be so much in the economy of it all. Because if you've got loads and loads of cryptocurrencies, how you file your taxes with that? What kind of software? So there's a million ways that there's still people to start new businesses and build new things that can help be for security. So there's still a lot to be unfolded from it.
I went to my accountant just 2 days ago to do my taxes, and she's a Manhattan accountant, deals with all kinds of businesses. She didn't know what blockchain was. So I was shocked, yeah.
Yeah, I think the learning curve is still. I think we're still down here, and that it's going to take a while for it to sort of become part of the vernacular. And having books like yours, where it makes it easy for people to understand. I think a lot of times with technology, it becomes so over everyone's head that they don't want to pay attention.
Right.
And when you can get people like yourself who can sort of write it in like really simple and easy language, the more you can see that there's a lot of value in that, and so you don't miss the opportunity because it seems to be so deeply technology focused.
Right. That's what I was really hoping with this book is to do that. And I think in the future, blockchain companies using blockchain won't even tell you they're using blockchain. It'll just be a foundational technology. But as a foundational technology, it allows for all kinds of innovation, above it.
And it's still free, and it's just so fascinating, and there's still so many different universes to play in. It's
for sure.
I'm utterly fascinated by it all. So you've been in business for quite a long time.
Yeah.
What would you say has been your biggest challenge when you've started something, whether it's diving into learning about blockchain, writing your very first book versus writing your 15th book, and how have you gotten past it?
Well, I think the biggest challenge for me is the business side and the promotion side, and trying to separate those two. They're two very different functions: writing a book, researching a book, and then trying to make the book become a reality. So it's like with any business, you can have a great idea. Like I've heard so many great ideas in my lifetime about businesses, all kinds of things, but the people who actually can make them turn into a product they're rare and few and far between. So I find that the toughest part. And it's like a big thing that I learned early on. I also write fiction, which never gets published, but I keep writing. I've written 5 novels, unpublished novels, and countless short stories. Some of the stories have been published. But so I used to, when I first started out, getting rejected was just painful. You get a rejection slip from the New Yorker or from an agent or whatever. And one huge thing in my life that I think has helped me be, somewhat successful is learning to see rejection as just part of day-to-day life. It's like you have to take the risk of being rejected in order to be accepted, right? There's just no two ways around it.
There is not.
But a lot of people, I think, I understand it, it's very hard to be rejected, right? You have to... you have to not put your... This is where my ideas about faith come in. Like, you have to put your belief in yourself and in your intuition and what you want to do. And it might not be right for the time and might not be right for the commercial market that you're in, but it doesn't mean that you're wrong, right? It just means you were rejected by the forces that...
At that time.
Yeah.
And it might not be, you might be wrong today,
right? But
you might not be wrong a year from now.
Well, this book here is a good example because, so a year ago, a lot is changing in the acceptance of blockchain and perception. A year ago, I wrote a proposal for a book similar to this, right? And my agent took it out, a senior person at Random House rejected the proposal, saying, "I've never heard of this. I don't think it's big enough to write a book about. It's just like, what's the big deal with this?" And it was rejected by about 8 different people, that proposal. So I said, to hell with that. I know that this is what I want to write about, and I know this is a big deal. So I just went ahead and wrote the book without any contract or anything like that.
Wow.
So I spent about 4 or 5 months, wrote the book, gave it to an agent, a different agent, just because the first one had already exhausted her contacts. So I got a different agent, and the time had changed. People were more into the subject, and the book was completely done, and it was done just the way I wanted it to be. It was, unusual in that regard. And it sold to the first editor at a great publisher who, preempted the other publishers. So
wow.
If I had gone along with the first rejections, I would not be sitting here talking to you about this book. And
fantastic.
So I think, sometimes rejection, you should say, yeah, that idea is terrible.
That idea sucks. Go
Right.
away. Never come back again.
But other times, you just got to persevere. And I'm definitely, I've always, since I was a little kid, I've always persevered. I'm stubborn as hell.
Same. So question for you. So you talked about a little bit about your faith. Can you talk about more about that? Because I feel like that, it's weird. I feel like faith and spirituality has now
Right.
become the thing du jour, as opposed to, being a deeply held belief.
Right.
And so for you, how do you sort of view your faith?
Well, so I have a deeply held belief, I would say. And I was raised, in the Episcopal Church. My grandparents, I was actually raised by, there were very few men when I grew up. Like all my grandfathers were dead. There was my father and 1 or 2 uncles. That was it. And so I was mostly raised by women. And aside from my mother, they all had really deep faith. My mother didn't have any at all. But my grandmothers were all different Christian religions, but like really, deeply religious and moral and all of that. So I grew up with that, and I rejected it, of course.
Of course, as one does.
And
I'm a recovering Catholic myself.
Right. But I always had a belief in like a higher power and a God, and that never wavered all through, since I was a kid. I remember having an experience where I was, I must have been 5 or 6 years old, and I was lying on my back looking up at this big elm tree in front of my house. And I just remember like feeling like I was transported up into this tree where these leaves were, and I felt this like sense of life and beauty and this like just intense experience of the universe there, right? And it's never left me that impression. And so as I went through life, I had encounters with different people. I had some great experiences in South America when I lived there, and about 18 years ago, someone introduced me to a form of meditation in the Sufi tradition, right? So I started meditating with a teacher, and that's really what has informed my faith now. I'm no longer with that teacher, but the practice, continues.
Wow. And what's your meditation routine?
The meditation is, when I first was doing it for the first 10 years, was twice a day for about 45 minutes each. So it's pretty intense. And now it's much less. I wake up and have prayers and recitations in the morning and meditate, usually once a day. Yeah.
Wow. So, yeah, it's changed for me because I, grew up strictly Catholic household. Went to Catholic school my entire life. Right. And then once I set foot on NYU's campus, I was like, never mind.
There's more to the world.
Yeah, there's so much. Wow, there's different religions. Who knew?
Right.
And so like I say, I'm a recovering Catholic, and so I found that like in the last year or so, like I used to kind of classify meditation and all this sort of spiritual stuff as kind of a hokey BS. But I always had this sort of deep, abiding faith because I always felt like there was something kind of helping and guiding along the way. Like there's too many weird things that have happened to me where like if someone did like push me out of the way or put me in the place I needed to be, then I probably wouldn't be there. Right. But then last year I had this experience where I went to the Tony Robbins like Unleash the Power Within, and it was so not the thing I was going to be ever be a part of. My friend dragged me because she wanted to go. And it was one of those things where it sort of kind of opened my eyes to meditation in a way that I thought I could actually deal with.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that it comes back to, like, whether you're in business, whether you're trying to learn something new, and like how you open yourself up to something new and interesting. And so now I'm doing my 14 minutes and 28 seconds every morning where I'm priming.
Yeah.
And it's definitely given me a lot more clarity.
Right.
And it's also sort of, again, like opened my consciousness to, so like now I'm kind of into this kind of crystal stuff. And like which one sort of feels like the one that you want to like have with you at all times. Right. But I think it's that level of like creativity and openness to different things and learning new things I probably wouldn't have put myself even anywhere near, I now have. So I think there is something really unique, especially when you're among the creative class, especially, where we have all of this noise around us. And so if you can have like that kind of moment to sort of like center yourself.
Yeah, I find it great. Yeah, it's good. And if you can connect with a greater being or a higher sense of the universe, then all the better. Although I have found it's nothing you can, I never tell anyone to meditate or try to proselytize at all, because I think it's something you have to come to yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that, I think people are far more open to it. I've read more books in the last year where more men over 50, who are now into meditation, as opposed to like you would be hearing about women reading women doing it. And so it's like when you start seeing across every single sector of business, for example, or creativity, now you're like, oh, I'm getting it now.
If you see men over 50 changing, that's pretty profound. I have to tell you.
It's pretty profound. I mean, I read Ray Dalio's Principles and heard about and learned about him and his transcendental meditation. And I was like, well, if the biggest hedge fund manager in the world does it, there's probably something interesting there. Yeah. So last question. So you've written this book. Mm-hmm. Now that you've written it, it's going to be coming out on March 26th, available where all books are sold. Mm-hmm. What do you hope comes out of this book, and what's going to be next for you?
So I have a plan for this book and this subtitle, The Next Everything. I'm working with someone on developing a newsletter that's called The Next Everything, which will cover different types of technology and cultural things that are happening, because I'm always really interested in that. And hopefully we'll get some consulting work out of that and help guide people through all these technologies and changes that are happening. So that's one, in terms of business, that's a big thing that I'm really interested in. The next book I'm doing is a book on light. So I have wanted to do this book for many, many years, and I've taken a lot of notes over the years. But I see light as something that we all enjoy, that keeps us going, that we don't really think about much. Like, we have light in this room, we have light in our hearts, we get light from the sun. Light helps us sleep, with melatonin, and we have just so many experiences of light. And there are scientific things, there are health things. So I want to write a book that really covers what light is and makes people aware of the power of it in their lives. And so to do a book, though, you need to have what I call a coat hanger. You have to have a story to hang all the information on. Like a book about light, I can't just do a chapter after chapter about this and that. So I found a lighting designer who has been around since the punk rock days and now designs skyscrapers in Malaysia. She's just a fascinating person. So I'm going to tell her story, and through that, talk about all the vagaries and things about light.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so I think it'll be interesting.
Stephen, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was fun.
I mean, this is such a wonderful conversation tonight, which I knew it would be. I can't wait to read your book.
Good.
And so, as I said, Stephen's book comes out March 26th, available where every book you can ever find, so Amazon and all the like. That'll all be in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks. It was really fun. I really enjoyed this.
Awesome.